Obviously, the tale of Kurt Warner is inspiring. What kind of made you want to tackle this project?
I mean, well, you know, when I was a younger version of myself and I watched it all happen in real time, it was massive. I mean, it took the country by storm, particularly people of faith, as, you know, Kurt and his wife were very vocal about their faith and open about it. And but even outside of faith, I mean, as a football fan, as a sports fan, really just like a sports fan in general, or just like an Americana fan, you're like, what is happening right now? This guy who never should be in the position he's in is leading his team completely out of nowhere all the way to the Super Bowl and then wins it. And I mean, it's something that, you know, it's for the ages. It's that kind of a thing. So I already knew the story. I loved the story. I was impacted and inspired by the story. And then, you know, in typical, I think, God fashion, you know, we make plans and God laughs. And so I had all these plans, as we all did pre-pandemic, and there's all these movies I was going to do, and it was like, oh my gosh, and I wasn't going to be available for American Underdog. And then the pandemic hit, and then all of those jobs that I thought I was going to do all kind of went away or shifted or whatever. And now suddenly I became available, and the Erwin brothers had reached out to me. They were like, listen, you were our #1 choice for this. We were disappointed you were going to be unavailable. Now you are. Would you want to do it? And so it all felt very fated. You know, it all felt like it was supposed to be. And though I wish we had months and months more to practice, as, you know, when you're a 40-year-old guy learning how to throw a spiral for the first time in your life, it is not the easiest thing to jump into. But other than that, man, it was just a really kind of, yeah, it all felt very meant to be.
What was some of the hardest obstacles outside of throwing to adapting to playing quarterback? And
I mean, honestly, that was really the biggest thing. I mean, I grew up throwing a lot of baseballs. I you know, throwing really any kind of whatever. But a football is a completely different dynamic. You don't really understand that. I never had anybody as a kid like really teach me, okay, so when you're throwing a football, it's a whole, you got this like, you know, kind of not cylinder, but you have this conic ball exactly. That's supposed to find exact kind of, you know, draft through the air. That's why you're trying to find that spiral. It's smoother, you know, all that stuff, and how you clock that back and how you throw it. So, you know, tendonitis. There was all kinds of issues. But no, I would say outside of all of that, you know, and taking some shots on the field, which in some ways, you know, sucks, but in other ways it's kind of like, yeah, but that's part of the job. Like, you know, I wanted to kind of hit, you know, to get some hits because sure. I wanted it to feel a little more like, oh, this is what, you know, Kurt went through, even though the level of hits that I took on the field were still nothing compared to what real linebackers and everybody are you know, were doing to him. But I would say that the hardest or most challenging thing outside of just the physical kind of, you know, attributes of it was, you know, he's a real person. He's alive right now. You can see him on television regularly. I can be compared to him at any point. And when you're doing a, you know, a biopic, that's a daunting challenge sometimes because you obviously want to, you know, emulate this person as best you can. And I think I definitely did the best I could given the amount of time we had and everything that we had. But there's still stuff as an actor I look at and go, oh man, why did I do that? Why did I do that instead of doing that? You know, all the choices that you make. But I will say that Kurt and Brenda were on set. I mean, I would even say almost, you know, more than 50% of the shoot, and they were watching and they were listening, and so I knew that if at any point he was like, oh man, this guy is not pulling off me, he'd said something to someone at some point, but I could tell that he was quite happy, you know, and that felt great. That was a huge relief with that pressure that I was putting on myself. Like, is this going to work out? Well, he's not. He seems cool, so okay, just keep doing what we're doing. Just keep doing what we're doing, yeah.
What's something you learned about yourself playing this role?
That's a great question, Ricky. What is something I learned about myself? You know, I think through the process of American Underdog, and I think I was mentioning earlier, we had done this film, The Unbreakable Boy, almost same crew and everything. Another great film that's coming out for Lionsgate next year. But anyway, we kind of did these back to back, and this was after, again, we had been sitting around and pandemicking and not working for quite some time. And in that time, even though I had thought I learned a lot of these lessons and a lot of the therapy I've done in my life, which anybody out there, if you're thinking about it, I highly recommend you do it. I think everyone ought to, and we all need to. But I had kind of recognized just how much I had put my self-worth in things outside of myself, like work. But I didn't know just how much I kind of was doing that until the pandemic hit, and then it brought me to my knees. And so coming back into making these films, and American Underdog particularly, was a really interesting line that I was balancing, which was I was very grateful to be back to work, and I was very grateful to be making this movie, but I never wanted to show up for work any day and feel like this is my identity or this is my worth entirely, you know? So that was one of the things I was navigating in that time. And again, when you're trying to, I'm a 40-year-old dude playing like a 25-year-old Kurt Warner in his prime, coming to grips with your body being in a place where it's like, wow, I'm not the spring chicken anymore. I don't just get to do whatever I want without there being any consequences whatsoever. So that's very humbling, and that's good. I think every opportunity that God brings into our lives where we can be humbled a little bit more is only good for ourselves, because I think one of the worst things that's going on in the world right now is just this crazy inflation of hubris and arrogance and people thinking that they know better about everybody else's lives, and so anyway, not to go off on too much of a tangent.
No.
Yeah.
And I just want to thank you for using your platform to spread that message about anxiety and stuff like that. Was that something that was it something you took the courage to do? Was it something you've always wanted to do?
To step out and talk about mental health?
Yeah.
No. The reality was, I was pretty convinced, me and my sisters, we grew up in a household that had a lot of mental and emotional health issues. I don't know that we would have necessarily called them that as we were kids growing up, but you become an adult, you can kind of look back and go, oh yeah, my mom, for sure, and by the way, and multiple people in my family, is probably everyone's family, but my mom for sure was struggling with her mental health issues. And so I knew that at some point I was going to probably, get into that fray as I was having to discuss my mother and whatever that relationship was. But it wasn't until I really bottomed out and I had to go to very life-changing, life-saving therapy. And when I did, and all of the things that I learned, things that I really feel like are not spoken about enough, or people don't know enough about. And in order to even know about some of these things, you have to pay lots and lots of money for very expensive therapies in various ways. And so coming out of that and feeling like, oh my God, if I didn't know these things, I don't know if I would still be alive right now. I think my job, my responsibility, or one of the responsibilities of mine in this life, as long as I'm being given the gift of it, is to go and talk about mental health and the importance of it and how we all need to be working on it. And I really do believe that if we were all to heal our hearts and our minds, if we could get everybody in the world to do the work to heal their hearts and minds, then we would have no other problems, because every real issue that's affecting humans and animals and the environment and everything else, you can root it all back to someone's dysfunctional, broken heart or mind. People that are so, greed is one of the biggest things, I think. People don't realize that is a psychological issue. If you are so addicted to money and success and all of that stuff, you're trying to find your worth and identity outside of, the actual things, that, the fact that you are just alive and you are here and you are present. And those things lead people way down the line where they start to neglect the humans and animals and plant life that their greed might be negatively affecting, because the ends justify the means, and that is and all of that can be traced back to bad mental and emotional well-being. So that's what I want to happen more and more.
I love that. In doing my research, I did find out you're a little bit of a gamer.
Oh yeah.
What is your all-time favorite football game?
Well, I mean, honestly, if you had to break it down, I'd say Tecmo Bowl. Yeah. I was a pretty big Tecmo Bowler. I obviously played with the Raiders and Bo Jackson all the time, because everyone understood that that was basically just a cheat code, because Bo Jackson. But I loved me some Tecmo Bowl. And then, with the Nintendo 64, there was this, I think it was pre-Madden, maybe Madden was still kind of around at the time, but there was this game called, it was like Nintendo 64, like Quarterback Club or something like that. That one I liked.
That was one of my favorite, because you could play the actual quarterback challenges.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
So I like that one. But then, to be honest, I kind of got off of sports games after that.
Yeah.
I was never as good at them as other people. Like, I'd try to play Madden against my buddies, and they would smoke me every time. And I realized that as a gamer, I like to be able to just have control over, like, one thing. My brain couldn't handle that I could switch to any one of the players to control them to do something. I'm like, well, that's too many options. I don't know what to do with all of that. But if I'm like in a first-person shooter or something like that, and I'm only controlling my one guy, I'm like, cool, I can handle this. I can handle the decisions that come up.